Merci, mesdames. Thank you, ladies. Il est un honneur pour moi de me retrouver ici en Nouvelle-Écosse, parmi autant de champions du mouvement conservateur. Vous représentez le meilleur du Canada. En regardant autour de moi, je ne peux m'empêcher d'exprimer mon optimisme quant au futur de ce vaste et magnifique pays. Il me fait aussi grand plaisir de partager cette scène avec un grand Canadien patriotique, Andrew Scheer. Les Canadiens peuvent se sentir rassurés et chanceux de compter sur Andrew comme prochain Premier ministre. My friends, my fellow oh my goodness, I've just realized here I am speaking in Justin Trudeau's Canada, and I have made no attempt whatever to parody the indigenous clothes of the natives. Please don't think me rude. Let me do something about that right away. That's better. That's better, c'est mieux comme ça. Do you know, I don't know if you ever had a kind of rich, well-meaning, dim, embarrassing gap year friend. I bet you never thought in a million years that that rich, dim, embarrassing, well-meaning friend would become the leader of a G7 country. I've got to tell you, my friends, I can see no greater contrast in politics at the moment than that between the leaders of Canada's two big parties. The Conservatives are led by somebody from an ordinary background but with extraordinary skills, extraordinary resilience, extraordinary talent, extraordinary integrity. The Liberals, well, they are led by somebody who had every privilege, every opportunity, but it turned out that behind the smile there was nothing. It was like the Cheshire Cat, just the smile surrounded by airy nothing. Never make the mistake of underestimating Andrew Scheer. 25 years old when he won his parliamentary seat against a guy who had held that seat longer than he had been alive. 32 years old when he became Speaker. And now leading this great party with the ambition not of snatching at the levers of power in Ottawa, but rather with the ambition of giving power and control back to ordinary people in Canada. You contrast that to the supply teacher who kind of accidentally ended up becoming a prime minister. Every day that passes, it becomes clear that behind the charm and behind the good looks, there's literally nothing. Nothing there at all. As I was going up the stair, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish he'd go away. My friends, this should be no contest, right? This, if it came down to character, to policy, to commitment, this would be, as they say across the border, a slam dunk. But here we come to the cosmic asymmetry, the unfairness that afflicts every right of centre party, yours and mine included. And it's this. The voters tend to send for Conservatives in times of crisis. They tend to vote for us just when the Treasury has been emptied, when the credit has been exhausted, when the economy is plummeting, when unemployment is rising. And we then come in, we Conservatives, and we do what needs to be done. We willingly put our shoulder to the wheel. We make the tough decisions. We restore order and sanity to public finance. And just when we've done the job, just when the economy is growing again, they say, oh, that's great. Thank you very much. Why don't we vote for that nice bimbo supply teacher with a nice smile? I struggle to think of any government that left such a golden legacy to its successors as Stephen Harper's government in Canada. You can take any metric you like. Crime was falling, immigration was controlled and legal, which meant that people were coming here with a sense of optimism and patriotism, keen to make a success of their lives in this country. This was the only G7 state to come through the downturn without a downturn. Taxes were falling faster than at any time in Canadian history. The budget was in surplus. And now look. Now we have a deficit that we're told won't be closed until 2045. Unforgivably, a government that is squandering those reserves during a boom time. My friends, Canadians, if anything, are a fair-minded people. We understand, you understand, that no good parent would run up huge debts and pass them on to their children. That doesn't become any less true when people think as voters and when people act as a nation. There is something unethical and immoral about sustaining living standards today and expecting somebody else to pick up the bill. And let me say something as a conservative among fellow conservatives. Your party should never be embarrassed about making the case for Canadian patriotism and the vision of what this country stands for and what it could be. And when I talk about Canadian patriotism, when I talk about that vision, I don't mean the vision of Trudopia. I don't mean a great country that defines itself as being a kind of touchy-feely, UN-compliant, nappy-changing, interventionist social democracy. I mean, yeah, there may be a certain market for that in some aspects of this country, but I tell you, your allies abroad, my friends, your allies have not forgotten the Canada of Vimy Ridge and the Canada of Juno Beach. Unless I've completely misread your temper, I don't think Canadians have completely forgotten it either. In a way, that shouldn't need saying. And yet, as we sit here in Halifax, we're living through an extraordinary time where it is considered acceptable for people to trash the name and deny the legacy of the founder of Confederation, Sir John A. Macdonald. Now just think of what people are doing when they attack Sir John A. Macdonald's legacy. What are they really saying? I mean, what is it that we remember him for, right? What they're really saying is the world would have been a better place if Canada hadn't come into being at all. And I've got one question for the people who say that. What country has contributed more to the happiness of the happiness of peoplekind than this one? When nations and systems that have elevated the individual above the collective have struggled for supremacy against autocracies that have done the opposite, every time Canada has been on the right side. If you don't think that this country was worth building, you find me a better one. Let me say this as a friend of Canada, as a friend of Canadian democracy. My late father fought, I suspect alongside some of yours, in Italy in 1944. My late uncle is buried in rural Ontario. He was a casualty of an exercise during military training, a surprisingly common way for people to meet their end. His heartbroken parents never got to visit the grave, but they were consoled by receiving regular letters from a local woman who, spotting the headstone and inferring that the body lying there was a long way from home, for years took it on herself to lay flowers at the grave. Our countries have been through a great deal together. Look around you in this city. See the monuments to the young men who were prepared to cross half the world in order to take up arms for freedom. 500,000 Canadians passed through Halifax alone in the Second World War, out of a population of 11 million at the time. 500,000, almost all of them volunteers, rushing to the aid of a country on which, in most cases, they'd never set eyes. Why? Partly, of course, because of congruities of language, of culture, family ties, of course. But that wasn't all. Didn't they also have a sense that they were defending a better way of life? A way of life that elevates the rules over the rulers, that elevates the individual above the collective, and they were right to believe that. My own country, I'm glad to say, is at last recovering its sovereignty, its independence, its right to hire and fire the people who pass its laws. And one of the consequences that I hope will flow from our recovering our self-government is that we will be able to strengthen our bonds with our oldest and closest allies. In part, this is a question of closer economic and trading links. Canada looks like it's going to have a trade deal with the EU. It's great, much better to have one than not to have one. It took 7 years, and we still haven't got CETA through. But we could do a lot better. We could do a lot better. What about a trade deal between the UK and Canada that simply said, whatever is legal in your country is automatically legal in ours and vice versa? That this applies to services, it applies to professional qualifications. We trust each other's regulators. We are creating a proper market for the consumer, not for big business. And if we have such a deal between the United Kingdom and Canada, it becomes very difficult not to extend the same deal to the United States, which would solve the NAFTA problem that your current Prime Minister is making such a hash of. We could have a different way of doing trade, one that brought together initially common law and English-speaking countries, but that extended in time to anyone who was able to meet those standards, that was based on mutual recognition instead of standardization, on extending choice and opportunity, on being a capitalism for the little guy, not a capitalism for the big corporates. And we can lead the world together in establishing such a system. But this is about more than trade and economics. I want to re-establish that alliance of free democracies that has done so much to secure the happiness and liberty of our species. And I want to see Canada resume its leading place in that alliance. And the great elemental historic task of your party is to preserve that vision of a proud, strong, free, independent Canada. If there is one job for the Conservative Party of Canada, and for all of you as private individuals, even when you're not sitting here as delegates, it's this. Your job is to remind young people here, wherever their parents or grandparents were born, that they are not just a random set of individuals born to a different random set of individuals. That being Canadian means something. That it makes them heirs to a sublime tradition. Let me end with a plea from a British Conservative to Canadian allies. Honour the men who made this country. Keep intact the freedoms that you've all been lucky enough to inherit, and pass them on securely to your children. Never be afraid to speak to and for the soul of this great country, of which, by good fortune and God's grace, you are privileged to be part. Thank you, my friends. God bless you. God bless Canada. And God bless the alliance of our great Commonwealth democracies.
Very, very good. That was fabulous.